Hey, friend, welcome back or welcome to the Trend Report. I'm excited that you're joining me for today's conversation. I'm Sid Meadows, and I'm a business advisor, coach, and longtime student of the office furniture industry. And as you know, my goal is simple: to share information and resources and tools with you that help your business grow and help you grow and help you move forward each and every day. And I'm excited for today's conversation as we dive into yet another CEO chat with Karen John of Heartwork. Hey, Karen, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Sid. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you. It's early in the morning, which I love morning podcast recording. So my energy is always really good in the mornings, but I'm really glad to have you here today. I've heard about you for quite some time. I've heard your name mentioned in a lot of different circles. I'm like, I have got to meet Karen John. I got to have her on the show. So big shout out to my friend and business colleague, Michelle Warren, for connecting the dots.
Oh, yes. She's wonderful.
Yes, yeah. She is. She did a podcast takeover a few weeks ago. So I trust her. So I let her take over my podcast. So Karen, I kind of want to break the show today and our conversation into a couple of different parts. And I want to start with you first, then dive into a little bit of like the behind the scenes or get to know Karen just a little bit. And one of the things that my research told me and that we talked about in our pre-call was you were very well traveled. You went to school and you studied at UCLA, and then you moved to Florence, and then you moved to Milan, and then you came back to Stanford. And you speak multiple languages. So tell me a little bit about what was the catalyst that said, I want to travel the world and experience different aspects of the world for you? What was the driver for you?
Well, I think like most people in design, I think I am very curious. I also think, design is about making things better. But at the end of the day, it's for people, right? And how we live. And I think traveling is just like, I don't know, it feeds me so much. But I came from a small town in Northern California, and I've got to credit my parents actually, who always were supportive of travel. So as you mentioned, I was at UCLA. I was always interested in design, but I didn't really see growing up, like, well, what role would I play? What does that mean? And so when I was at UCLA, I actually studied art history because the design department was really the art department. And I knew I wasn't an artist.
Yep.
And so I did see this program called Italian Design in Florence for the summer, like you mentioned, which really was, I think, a pivotal moment. I went over there, and in that course, we ended up visiting Milan, and we visited Michele De Lucchi, Antonio Citterio, Ettore Sottsass, and Mario Bellini, which, again, each of them are such amazing designers. But what hit me visiting these studios, listening to them talk about their work, I was like, wait, this is not happening in the US this way. And it was a combination of, I think, the role of the designer, which I would say, again, at that time, this is a while ago, was very multidisciplinary, which was different than in the US. So in the US, if you were an architect, you did buildings. If you were a designer, you were an interior designer. They were all separate, right? If you were a graphic designer, you're a graphic designer. Over there, I saw like touring these studios that like they were designing the product. They were designing the showrooms. They were designing the marketing materials. They were designing the factories that these products were built in. And I think that was so interesting. But then what I also saw for the first time, and I'm not even sure I really knew what to call it, was I felt like they were like literally like strategic business thought partner for the brand. And so don't laugh, but having come from art history, I was like, oh my God, it's like the Medicis with like the artists, Michelangelo, all these different people. So like, I think that really struck me. And I went back, did my senior year, and then I went back right away. And for the summer, again, I was lucky. My parents were taking a trip. I think I took a trip, and then I said, I'm going to go a couple weeks early. And I ended up interning. But anyway, I think that first trip, I just got back from Europe. I went to an amazing conference in London for a couple of days, and I was in Amsterdam for a couple of days. And I was just reminded since the pandemic, I haven't traveled as much.
Oh, yeah.
And just how much I love it. It feeds you. I think it brings such optimism. I feel like.
I would agree with that.
Connect with people. They're so nice everywhere,
Yes, they are. And there is so much to see in the world. There's so much good that the world has to offer. And I think we should all go explore it.
And you see different things, right?
Yes.
Seeing things a different way is so, again, I keep thinking of the word like, it's like satiating.
That's awesome. So what did you end up getting your degree in?
So my undergrad was in art history, and then I went to Italy. And then after I interned, with Antonio Citterio and Terry Dwan. They were Studio Citterio Dwan. Terry, who was American architect from Yale and Rice, had gone over with her Fulbright, and she kind of pulled me aside and said, if you're really interested in design, you need to study design. You need to get a degree. You're art history major. And so I went to Domus for the year, which was a master's. And I think I was the only person who hadn't had like a formal design undergrad.
Yeah.
And I've got to be honest, I think those first like crits I did with like Andrea Bronzi, who's like one of the grandfathers of Italian design, who unfortunately passed like pretty recently. I mean, I think I probably cried afterwards. I just wasn't used to that. Like, why are you doing this? The yelling and the shouting and stuff.
Right.
But I learned, even till today, I feel like that year learning design that way was so amazing. I think it really informs how I look at and also that kind of limitless approach to design. Like design is not just the product, it's how I think about what kind of business I want to make, right?
Sure.
How I want to talk to or connect with people in our community, et cetera. Like you really see, what they coined like design thinking and things like that. But
and your master's degree is in, what's your master's?
Industrial design.
Industrial design. Got it.
Yeah. And it was great because, it was a year, but it was very unique. There was only like 25 people. I think there were 3 Americans. And so very international. And the courses were not like quarters or semesters. It was literally like Alberto Alessi would come in and do a project with you for 5 days, or Rolf Feldbaum from Vitra would come in and talk about Vitra for a couple days. So it was a combination of like lectures and projects with real industrialists. So again, that was really exciting for me to hear and feel. And
But you're also been exposed to some amazing leaders within the design industry and the product industry as well. I mean, wow, what an amazing experience to be taught by some of these people.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, we even had like Bruno Munari, who was like artist designer, and Achille Castiglioni. And I mean, it really was amazing. I was so fortunate. And here I was like this young girl from, Stockton, California, that had just happened to take a summer course through Saatchi in Florence and changed everything. So
when you were there, were you thinking about what was next? Like with the art history and a master's degree in industrial design, what was it that was going to be next for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have to really credit Terry Dwan, who I worked for, who's, a friend now, but at the time, was really kind of a mentor. And the fact that she really kind of pulled me aside and said, what are you going to do? Do you want to be an architect? She's like, let me tell you, there's like 10 famous architects. They're all men and they live a long time. Like you got to really like architecture. And the funny thing was, I never really gravitated toward architecture. I love it, but for myself. But what I did gravitate to was product. And I think it really was the scale of product. I liked the human scale of product. Again, being super curious about people and life and all that kind of good stuff. And I saw firsthand in Italy kind of the beauty and let's say, what really drove Italian design that was so different to me was that relationship between design and manufacturing. So, these designers worked very closely with the manufacturers, understood the engineering. When Antonio Citterio designed with Cartel, like the engineers, it was so collaborative. And that just wasn't happening in the US. And it's something I carried with Heartwork, right?
Yeah.
Like part of the reason, there are many reasons we manufacture in the US, but one of it was really to stay close to that design and manufacturing. And I saw that when I was at DWR later, because you realize that a lot of these big retailers were really working through agents. And so they were literally sending like sketches with a target price to an agent who was going to a factory. And that's not really where innovation comes from, or really where value comes from, right?
I mean, if you've ever been to a real office furniture manufacturer, I think one of the best parts about going to a factory is going into the factory and seeing the craftsmanship and the art, for that matter, that goes into the manufacturing. Now, I'm not talking about mass production manufacturing. I'm talking about like what you're describing in European. We see it a lot in the United States, where you go in and they're still sculpting wood, right? You see wood being steam bent and you see it being sanded and, glued together, just the way everything happens. It's just a beautiful thing to be able to see and to experience. And I think it really gives you a completely different perspective about what it is we actually do when you see the craftsmanship and the art. And some of these people that work at these factories have been there 50 or 60 years doing the same thing. It's just beautiful. And some of it is generational too, passed down to their children. It's beautiful.
I completely agree, Sid. And I find it, Rob, who's founded DWR, used to say, like, making good product is hard, right? Like,
Yeah.
it really is. And I always thought from the beginning too, when I started Heartwork, like, just focus on make a good product, and then the business will come, right? And so we stay very focused in storage, and that's another story. But I think going back to the point about the manufacturers, I agree. I find also it is hard, and you just have such appreciation when you're in any factory and meeting the people, and like you said, seeing them with their craft and just recognizing and appreciating everything that goes into everything you make. I mean, I always say, even to my team, like, just think how many people had to make, like, how many thoughts, like, what goes into everything that we take for granted. It's so easy to walk through any environment and forget every single decision. And of course, obviously we're in design, so we do see that, and we think that. But I think I have enormous respect for the makers. And again, my love for, or seeing the value of design and manufacturing being close, really came from my Italian experience.
That's awesome. So traveling the world gave you some insights into what you wanted to do next, gave you respect for design, led you to product. And through the course of your career, you ended up at DWR, or as we call it, but as it's known as Design Within Reach. So you're at DWR. How long were you there, and what did you do?
I was there like 6 or 7 years. I was hired to do product development. They didn't have product development at the time. So, they'd had a lot of success. They were working with these really impressive manufacturers who were in their own right brands, right? So they weren't like contract OEM manufacturers. They were brands. So they had a really good understanding of, obviously, design, but also like package testing and everything, right? All the marketing. And they were growing, and they started to also get new requests from their clients in the US. And there was kind of this opportunity that Rob saw for DWR to start developing its own product, but really working with these like established manufacturers. So I started as product development, and then over time I took on merchandising as well.
Okay. So at what point during your journey did you say to yourself, I'm going to start a manufacturing company and sell furniture?
That's a good question.
That's a huge decision, right? To say.
Yeah. I think I always knew I wanted to start my own business. I think I was in furniture for a long time. And quite honestly, when I left Design Within Reach, I moved to New York, and I was actually kind of thinking, maybe I should start a company in a totally different field. I did 2 years in tech in between after Stanford before going back into furniture. And I was always inspired by the creativity and the entrepreneurship. And I think it definitely was like a big part of the inspiration as well. But at the end of the day, I came back to the fact that, like, I know furniture. I love furniture. I went to a conference in the Netherlands instead of going to Milan that year because I was kind of deciding what to do. There was a new conference called What Design Can Do. And it was so cool because they were looking at design, again, not just at furniture, but through, healthcare and education and agriculture and all these things, and through a much broader, bigger lens. And there actually was Olivia Toscani, who was like the creative director of Benetton, who was a teacher at Domus when I was at Domus, gave a talk about his manifesto of design. And I don't know, all these dots connected. And I'm like, I just can't leave this industry. Like, this is really what I like. And there was an artist, a Dutch artist, that had done this whole research on how people spend so much time in the office and all these things. And about that time, I think Casper was launching their mattress and saying, like, you spend 20 years of your life in your bed, you should buy a good mattress.
Right.
And I'm like 30 at the office, right? And I think we had always at DWR kind of struggled with finding enough product for workplace. And so that's kind of when I realized, I was going to.
It's time to do it.
I didn't immediately think, I'm going to be like a manufacturer brand. I think at first I thought, kind of similar to DWR, well, what if we're kind of building more of a platform? We were selling the workplace furniture and just making that easier. And I think what DWR did so well was really curating and editing that process. And because, versus I think happens today is you can go on Amazon, you can find anything out there, but do you really have
Yes.
time to sit there and do that? Not necessarily. So anyway, long story short, I realized though, when I looked at the market, that the product, there's a lot of product, but
Mhm.
you can imagine, because we know our industry, if I made a phone call and I said, hi, could I sell a couple of your, let's say, quote unquote, chairs? They'd be like, well, you got to take all of the chairs, like the whole assortment. Like, we're not going to let you just sell a couple of them.
Yep.
And then they were like, also, okay, so how many clients do you have and what's your marketing budget? And I was like, okay, this is going to be really hard.
Yep.
And so that kind of, I realized, let's just do a proof of concept. And I decided to start with storage, really because I felt like storage was really being looked at as a commodity and not as a design solution.
And you started Heartwork in 2012?
Yeah.
Okay, 2012.
Yeah.
And so let's a couple of things here, but like I want to go back to something you said a minute ago. Being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart.
No.
It's there's so many ups and downs and struggles and challenges. You described a couple of them, but I would like to ask you, and then we'll dive into a little bit about Heartwork. What do you think's been your greatest accomplishment in building the business?
First of all, I think we make a great product and I'm very proud of that. But I would say personally, my greatest accomplishment, and not my easiest by far, maybe that's why it's my greatest, is I feel like after almost 14 years, right? We have a really good team and we have really great partners. And that feels really good.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people leave corporate and think they're going to be an entrepreneur because they are like fed up with, the way things work, right? And I had some of that too, for sure.
Yep.
And I was a little humbled when I started my own business and realized, oh God, this is hard. Even at a small scale, this is hard. Like this is, and you kind of like embarrassed, like, oh my God, what am I not doing right? Like all these things. And I think that at the end of the day, though, that's probably something that makes me happy and also gives me energy.
Yeah. Well, it's important to remember, and for you listening, it's important to remember every company, every manufacturer, every solopreneur like me, every consultant that you meet, every dealer that you meet, everybody has a day one. We all have a day one. And when we look at our companies on day one and we look at our companies on day 12,000, it's important to understand the growth that has happened and what you've accomplished, what you've overcome through those processes, because it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of taking what you learn. It's a lot of bumps in the road and setbacks and perceived failures to really try to propel your business forward. So, and now here you are all these years later with this thriving, successful business. So let's dive in just a little bit. Who is Heartwork? What do you do?
So we design and manufacture modular storage solutions. They're flexible, they're adaptable, really allow people to do their best work from anywhere. So originally started focusing on commercial.
Right.
I thought originally that would be small, medium businesses. I had this romantic idea that people were all quitting their job and they needed Heartwork because come on, you got to be surrounded. Yeah. Those people go to IKEA. And I realized early on we were getting calls from the Nike, Google, Gensler. And that really opened my eyes to a much larger commercial than I had planned or expected. Yep. And was also go back to why I like to travel. I mean, I like newness, right? So I think that was a newness for me.
Sure.
Because at Design Within Reach, a lot of our commercial was really just like lobbies and classics and stuff like that. So I had to learn. That was a learning curve. Yeah.
So tell me about the name. Where did the name come from? Heartwork.
So I think, again, when I started Heartwork, I realized the reason I wanted to start a business was I wanted to create something bigger than me. And what I mean by that is not necessarily in size, but back to a great place where people would want to work, where partners would want to be partners, where clients would want to be clients, et cetera. But it was really based on this idea that, I used to joke that everyone did what they loved, there would be world peace, right? And I think that, design, what we and our colleagues do to design spaces really sets the stage for all the creativity and growth that the design of space is so, and place is so important and influential. So Heartwork is just the idea, though, you should do something you love. Your space should be as inspiring as your work. We used to say early on, one of my friends coined this that we still use, which is that it's designed for your pleasure and your productivity.
Okay, that might be able to be spun a couple of different ways. Maybe you don't want to, right? So,
but I think it hits this
yep.
idea that like we're in a category that honestly had been overlooked and thought of as you need file cabinets, you need a cabinet, like what do you need? And I think our goal has always been how do we deliver something that has high utility because people buy storage when they need it. It's not like a decorative, ceiling fixture or something for a lobby. But we also want to deliver something beautiful. And so I think there's always that goal of like, how do we do something that has high utility and can be beautiful? Even if it's a simple cabinet, it can still be
Sure.
beautiful. It can have really nice details of craftsmanship. I feel like the way that we kind of fold and wrap, I always feel like it looks like we're wrapping a present with the sheet steel or the colors that we developed with Laura Guido-Clark, who I know you interviewed, who's a dear friend. And I met when I was at DWR and kind of was one of the first people I called when I thought, okay, we're going to do storage. Well, we're going to need some colors because I looked online and it was gray. And I remember this was funny. I was online.
Gray, black, and white.
Gray, black, and white. And I was looking for a supplier of colors that I could choose from. And I found this, like, when I Googled, it said something like 50 colors. And I was like, oh my God, 50 colors. This is it. And I clicked on the PDF and it opened up and it was literally 50 shades of gray. Like it was like, and they were named things like dusk and dawn and smoke and all
my
these.
goodness.
And then that's when I was like, okay, I think we're going to need to make some colors. And so obviously
it's amazing what color does to an environment, right? And how it makes you feel.
Absolutely.
And the emotions that we will link down to the episode. It's way back, I think, in like the 30s or 40s. Yeah, but we'll link down to the episode in the show notes with Laura Guido-Clark about love of good color, I believe is what the episode was called, but we'll be sure and link to it. But you forgot something. I want to go back to the name. Okay. Let's talk about the call you got from your mom.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So like I told my parents I was starting a business. I told them it was going to be named Heartwork. And I went to the gym in New York, I remember. And I came back and my phone was like blowing up with all these missed calls from my mom. And then I get this voicemail and she's basically like, hi, honey. Your dad and I, we're here and we wanted to call you because you told us about Heartwork and we're just concerned that that might not be the right name. It sounds a little like a cardiology. My dad was a doctor, so I was like, okay. And we just think that, you really might want to rethink this. And I've come up with some names for you. And I just want to just tell you, and then you can decide. It was like designyourownwork.com or now I'm not giving my mom credit because she actually is quite creative. And I will say that she gives a lot of unsolicited opinions and we do adopt a lot of them because I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. But the names was not, they were all over the map. And fast forward, thankfully, she did in the past, like, I don't know, even like 5-8 years ago, said to me, Heartwork, I really love that name. And I think the thing that I would say, just for anyone listening who wants to start something, if you're waiting to start something for everyone to tell you that's a great idea, you can't. Like you are bringing something to life that no one is really vision. Like you hold that vision and you have to be able to go through that early part, whether it's like with investors saying no or different things, like they just don't see it. And that has nothing to do with all the great things went through that period. When everyone thought it was stupid, it's like, oh, why are you doing that?
I think one of the things that I love about what you just said is I do appreciate how much courage that our family members have and just feel free to share their unsolicited advice, right? But I love it. And I love that it's such a great part of your story. I hope somewhere like you have that message recorded somewhere and saved on a memory stick or something somewhere. But I also think that one of the things that you just said was we do as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as builders, let's call us builders, right?
Yeah.
There is a thing of seeking outside validation that we really don't need.
Well, you really can't get, right?
Yeah, not the way you want it anyway.
Not at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're looking for that, like would mean like we want control over the outcome and we can't. I mean, anything great is even, I think the best things that have happened at Heartwork are the things that even I didn't imagine. And so if you're always trying to control that, it's really hard to let a lot of the good stuff unfold. But it does take a lot of risk. I think I finally recognize I'm pretty I'm much more risk tolerant than I gave
Mhm.
myself credit for,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm. You
sometimes I'm
have to
even sitting there
be.
thinking like, oh yeah, this is whoa, KJ, we need to that's a lot of
I can so identify with every one of these, and every business leader that we've talked to that have started something from the ground up has gone through all the same things that you're describing right now. All the, the
absolutely.
decisions and the fear and the anxiety and the external validation. I mean, every one of us have gone through that at different levels. But Karen, what do you feel like is Heartwood's competitive edge? Like, what's your competitive advantage in a marketplace that seemingly can be saturated with suppliers? And I air
Yeah.
quoting saturated because I don't believe that's the case, but a lot of people do. So what's your competitive edge? What makes you different?
We really focus on design and quality together. And so, what that means, though, is that we are typically working with very large organizations, whether it's corporate or healthcare or education,
Mm-hmm.
where design and quality are required. One of our clients is Siemens, and they have their head in North America. She said to me, you know, I don't want to overpay for a locker, but I don't want to replace a laminate locker in 6 months. And they're also looking, they're responsible for, if you think about another quote that I loved. I went up to Boston a long time ago and met with the man in charge of Boston Properties at the time, and he said, the fastest way to build culture is through design. And so if you think of that together, you're trying to build culture with design. So it can't be a commodity, right? It has to be
Mm-hmm.
nice. And you also don't want to like try to shortchange yourself because you're just going to be having to replace things, which is costly and, all that kind of stuff. That's really where we play. And so I would say that's also kind of informed why, because we knew that design was important, why we chose to manufacture everything in the US, because it really gives us that flexibility. And I think we also do a lot of custom. So not like a onesie twosie, like I need to fit this one alcove, although we've done stuff. But I would say really developing and co-developing, whether it's standards programs or ways to really kind of bring that vision that the
Mm-hmm.
architect and the client have to life. And I think that is a competitive advantage as a lot of the larger players who also do storage, but maybe don't have that flexibility to do that. So,
Yeah. Well, I think also as a small business, being nimble is an advantage for you, right? I do for
oh,
all
I
small
think
businesses.
absolutely. I think that is such a under I think I love being nimble. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think I always sometimes I feel bad for the large guys because I'm like, I know they're smart people with way more experience, and
Mm-hmm.
yet like the nimbleness is so nice.
So when you think about your journey in the last 13 years, 14 years, if you had to pick one or two things, what would you say are been your greatest accomplishments at Heartwork so far?
Well, I think I mentioned one earlier, which would have been the team. I think
Yep.
another one, just in the last few years, as a couple years ago, we started to develop independent rep. I was able to go more frequently into lots of markets that I
Yep.
hadn't been in. I think when I hear people say, "Oh, Heartwork, I love Heartwork." I mean, that I don't know. I'm still like baffled. I sometimes leave and I'm like, what is?" And so, but I think it goes back to like I love that for whatever reason and in whatever way, the intent that we've had, that we've been committed to, people get it and they understand it and they like it. And I think it's not just the product. We try to design product that's easy to install. We get great feedback on things like that. But also I think, look at this is not an easy industry. And so I think being a partner when things don't go well is like even more important. And
Yep.
so I'm really proud of that.
So there's something that you said there about discoverability, that you being discovered, and you go into a market and you hear somebody say, "Oh gosh, we love Heartwork, we love your products, we love working with your team," right? And so I'm going to say to the person listening today, if today is the first day you're hearing about Heartwork, that is absolutely okay because I only learned about them about a few months ago.
Oh yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm still within, actually, we had an event 2 weeks ago. This is a good example of learnings for me, even and a reminder about our industry. And we had some of the larger, very successful dealer teams in for the event. And there's one of the dealer teams that we work with a lot. Like I would say they're one of our top dealers in New York, which was one of our big markets. And there was a top salesperson who came in and he says, I didn't know Heartwork. And I'm thinking that is wild. Like I know
Yep.
I talk to all these people, but it is the way our industry is. And I think it also shows that our industry is a lot on relationships, right?
Yes.
And I think, a lot of the ways that people go to market in other industries doesn't work in our industry,
Yep.
right?
Agreed. I totally agree with you. Well, I think discoverability is something that never stops because there's always somebody that can discover you and your company, especially for small brands, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it's fantastic that people are still discovering. So if you're listening and you're just discovering Heartwork, reach out and say, hey, like I want to learn more, or reach out to your local rep, right? And do that. So let's talk about the industry for a second. I want to shift gears again.
Yeah, please.
Big question.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think the future of the industry is? I mean, it's a really big question. So feel free to answer it. Like, there's all this conversation about AI and the impact of AI. There's, there's just tons of stuff happening. So, like, if you had to pick one thing that you think is part of the future, what is it?
I mean, first of all, AI is happening for everybody. And I'm actually very optimistic. I mean, don't laugh, but
Me too.
the first thing I think of is all the stuff I do that I don't want to do. Oh my God, are you telling me something else, somebody will do this? This is
Yes.
fantastic. So, and I think that we're already seeing kind of grassroots ways to use it. And I think our industry has so much complexity in it, right? And it'll be so wonderful to see what kind of creativity and innovation happens when we can remove a lot of that complexity and can really kind of have a more direct kind of relationship between the people that are using the products and the people that are designing them. So I think that I'm all for
It'll
AI.
be interesting to see if we actually embrace removing the complexity from our industry because we kind of thrive on the complexity. So I know that AI can remove it or part of it, but it would be interesting to see how we respond to it, right? So today it's a Monday in September. When we're recording this episode will actually launch in October. And today there was an article in the Monday Morning Quarterback about Gensler and their use of AI and a video about how they're using AI to circumvent, I guess. I haven't watched the whole thing yet. We'll drop a link to the YouTube video down in the show notes. But it's about how they're using AI to create experiences for brands before they ever put a shovel in the ground. So you can see the entire space, you can see it being used, you can see people walking around. And I think that's fascinating about how it could inform
Absolutely.
design, right?
Oh my
So,
God, anything to make, I think, streamline and simplify the design
yep.
build process would be great because that's where all the inefficiencies, that's where a lot of that budgeting, that's where all the frustration. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
the poor designers that have to redo things or the dealers that have to respecify because of that AI could be used to streamline that, I think would be great. And then their efforts could be more on.
So I'm going to say something a little sarcastic, but I actually mean it. And I'm going to say it for every furniture seller out there in the world. Hopefully, AI will help improve the process of building new or redesigning existing to a level that they don't have to cut the furniture budget. They can cut something else, right? Because we've all heard it. Oh, sorry, we got to cut this furniture budget. It's in half. We can't buy that. We can't buy this. So please don't cut our budgets anymore.
Yes, no, I know. Thank you. That's a good point.
It's a little sarcasm and a little bit of a jab, but not really meant to be because our budgets do get cut a lot. We're always the last in and the first cut.
Yeah, you're saying let's focus on quality.
Yep, that's correct. So I want to wrap up, Karen. You've been on this amazing journey. You've done a lot. You've had a lot of accomplishments. We didn't get to talk about the Nomad Collaborative that you mentioned earlier, but I did talk about that with
I know.
Natalie.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
That's so
I'm
nice.
super excited about that partnership of small businesses and you guys coming together. We'll also drop Natalie's episode down. Natalie from Hightower, we'll drop the link down in the show notes for you where we talk about the Nomad Collaborative. But I said to Natalie and I'll say to you, I applaud you guys for doing what you did, coming together with other small businesses and creating an experiential space for people in the New York marketplace to actually come and see what all of you do. I think it's fantastic. And I think it's a best practice and a path forward for a lot of small businesses to come together and do those kinds of things. So good for you. But you've had this great journey, this amazing journey. I want to leave today with what's a piece of advice that you could share with somebody coming up in our industry, regardless of whether they're in furniture, design, and whatever aspect they might be within our industry, what piece of advice would you give them?
Oh, I mean, don't laugh. But the first thing, I feel like I've been having this conversation with also a bunch of my friends' kids and my niece that are all like graduating and going to college or graduating college. And I mean, it hasn't been easy for me, but I will say at the end of the day, I've had to also really uncover and decide like, what do I really like to do? Because even when you start a business, you're doing a lot of different things. And at some point, you kind of feel like you're burnt out because you're like, I'm supposed to love this. I'm doing this, but like, why is this not feeding me? And I think even I personally have had to go back to like, well, what is it that I really love? And I think I really love people and I really love design and innovation. And so, I was just in Europe for the Biofabricate conference, which was all about biomaterials. And I mean, I felt like so energized and I feel like when you know, and I would just encourage people to, really choose. I think a lot of times people fall in love with ideas, but it's not what you're doing every day. And so they'll get a business idea and then they're like, why aren't I happy? Well, that might have been a cool idea, but it meant you're going to be doing XYZ 24/7 and you don't like that. So I feel like being really thoughtful about that, but again, not settling for not being able to do something that really brings you energy and that you feel good about. I mean, like I said, the name's Heartwork, but it's taken me 14 years to even get clear for myself.
Well, I think doing what you love to do, it's a journey. You're not going to do it day one out of college. You're not going to do it when you leave your first corporate job and go to your second corporate job, right? You got to keep looking for it. I also think where you are in your journey of life, at the age that you are, what you love doing changes, right? And that's okay.
It is okay. And I would say one of the best speeches, I think, is Steve Jobs' commencement speech at Stanford, where he says, and I feel like I did this, like in the sense that I did always kind of follow what I wanted to do. It wasn't necessarily the most lucrative or whatever, but like deciding to go to Italy, deciding to go back to Stanford, deciding to go into tech. Who would have thought? People would have said, why are you going into tech? I mean, that was one of the most amazing experiences for me.
Mhm.
And he says in his speech, like, if you just at each kind of says the dots, when you look back, the dots will connect.
Yeah.
And not to worry so much if you are, making decisions around what you want to do. And I feel like even within Heartwork, I'm doing that more and more. And that is just so rewarding and satisfying. And I'm always open to like coaching or supporting or
Sure.
talking to anyone who wants advice because I just feel like, it hasn't always been easy. And if anything that I've learned can be helpful, then please.
Well, I have two things I want to say. First off is what you just described was about mentorship and giving back. And I think it's really important for those of us that have been in our industry and in different positions and different roles to reach behind us and to help uplift the people coming up from behind us because we all had them as well. We may not have named them or think about them as much as we should have, right? But we all have a mentor or mentors in our life that reached behind us and helped us, right? I could start naming them for me. But I think when you talk about when you're talking about doing what you love and really trying to find it, you're going to know because there's a certain energy when you finish doing something. And for me, you hang up the phone with somebody or you get off of the call with somebody and the energy around it, I'm like, man, that was so great. I really love doing that. There are going to be signs as you're trying to discover in your journey, like, what do you really love to do? There are going to be signs. Just listen to those signs, listen to those feelings, listen to your gut, right? And whatever that is, go do more of it.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more, Sid. I think you said it well, and I think you do it well. Like I could tell when I met you that this is something that not only brings you great joy, but I think what's so cool is like joy and success go together. And, my dad used to tell, he was a OBGYN, he delivered a lot of babies. He'd come in my room at night and I remember him saying, just be your own boss and don't ever worry about money. Just be the best at what you do and you won't have to worry. And I think these poor kids these days, I can't tell you how many kids tell me like they're worried about money. And I'm like, I guess I get it. I guess
Yeah.
I'd be worried about money if my tuition was as much as yours, which it wasn't. But I think like, unfortunately, to your point, kind of connecting with like what you want to do. And I think trusting that, and same with this AI fear that people have, especially the young kids, it's like the AI is going to do what AI can do, but we still need
Yep.
people to guide and drive and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I'm probably very optimistic and I'm going to stay that way because
That's a great place to be.
I don't want to live in a world that's
No,
not.
me either. Karen, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today and really giving us a little bit of insight into you, into Heartwork, your thoughts about the industry. It's been a fascinating conversation. I've enjoyed getting to know you. Karen, if our community would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, they can reach me at Karen@heartwork.com. That's HERTWORK.com. And also on LinkedIn, I think is
perfect. So we'll drop email address and website down into the show notes as well as the LinkedIn profile. Just remember, if you do reach out to Karen, send her a note when you go to connect with her on LinkedIn and say, hey, I listened to you on the Trend Report podcast, which is why I'm reaching out. Karen, I appreciate you being here. For those of you that joined us today, thanks so much for being here with us. Go out there and make today great, and we'll see you right back here again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone.